guys, Nadya Martinez here, aka GothamGeekGirl. Join me as we delve into the world of pop culture, TV, movies, comic books, and video games, with the occasional special guests, interviews, and industry professionals. Today I'm joined by some very special guests, the cast and executive producers for the new NatGeo Emmy Award-winning anthology series Genius MLK. For the first time, the docu-drama series explores the lives of two iconic geniuses, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Genius MLK explores simultaneously the formative years, pioneering accomplishments, dueling philosophies, and key personal relationships of both Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., played by Kelvin Harrison Jr., and Malcolm X by Pierre. While King advanced racial equality through nonviolent activism, X advocated for Black empowerment, identity, and self-determination. The 8-part series also brings their wives, Coretta King, played by Weruche Opia, and Shabazz, Jayme Lawson, all who have joined me, to the forefront and shows them as formidable equals of the movement. While King and X met only once and often challenged each other's views, the two visionaries, with their wives leading by their sides, ultimately rose to pioneer a movement that lives on today. Nadya Martinez, hi guys.
Hey.
Congrats on the series. First, I want to say amazing job from everything down to like the mannerisms. You guys both got it down packed. How is it playing such incredibly important historical figures? What kind of preparation did it take to like embody them? Like I said, like the mannerisms and the speech. How was it playing these characters?
It was a wonderful experience. You know, it's something that I feel deeply privileged and honored to have had the opportunity to embark on. You know, it was we've said many times today, you know, it was, you know, of course, at the very beginning, you do the essential deep dive and exploration of the text. You know, you read the autobiography, you read The Sword and the Shield by Peniel E. Joseph, you watch a documentary that is guided and helmed by Dr. Betty Shabazz. You watch footage, you know, interviews, university lectures, panels, speeches. You watch all of this stuff, and you go to, you know, as much as you are afforded the time and the luxury to, you go to these places that they existed, and they walked and they breathed, they lived, they led in. You know, I had the opportunity to go to New York to spend time in Harlem, and it was a beautiful experience. You know, I love Harlem deeply. I love New York deeply. To be there and be inspired and empowered by that environment was a beautiful experience. And then, you know, when it comes to the mannerisms and things, you know, we worked with a dialect coach. You know, we lost and gained weight, you know, and we work out what it is to sustain that for 6 months in a healthy way, you know, as best we can. We, you know, for me personally, I was in his mannerisms so much that after the fact, when we wrapped, I had to relearn my own mannerisms because I was still doing things. I was like, that's Malcolm. That's not me. You know, I had to relearn myself in regards to my nuances, at least, and my mannerisms. But it was a beautiful experience, one that I would do all over again. And it was just an honor and a privilege to be of service to him.
One of my favorite moments in this show too is when we come back after the meeting and we both sit down in our like respective homes and we're like, how was meeting him? And he was like, he was skinny.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
I guess how do both of you work on like developing accents for these specific roles? Because the accents are very different.
Oh yeah, that's true. You know, like Aaron said, we work with a dialect coach, and I think you start pulling clips from the different years, and the hardest part is actually finding stuff from the earlier years. So I was pulling stuff from like when he was a teenager and trying to see what that sounded like, because he really started to figure out what he wanted to sound like. He went to seminary school, so I found his report card in one of the books, and he had this whole like orator like performance class. And he always scored really high in performance, but when it came to like research, it was like not as good scores. I didn't mean to put his business out there, but well, I guess whoever wrote that book put his business out there. But I think, you know, you try to get a little bit from each period of time, and you know what you hear later on is a bit of a weathered sound, and there's a little bit of exhaustion, and he was also, you know, he was eating a lot. He was smoking sometimes. He was drinking at times. He was stressed. And so all these different things that come with age and experimenting with the life of it all kind of play into trying to find those little nuances to put into it. And we would every episode would sometimes be like 2-3 years. So we had to be really specific about where we were and what part of who we were playing it was at the time, what he looked like, what they felt like. It's a lot. But yeah, I don't know what your experience was.
Yeah, that was very similar, working with a dialect coach. And I think that's something that is really it's really nerve-wracking, working with a dialect coach, because you're working with someone whose life and area of expertise is how to phonetically break down any accent that exists. And when you're working with someone that is that tuned, that acutely aware, that aligned with this particular voice, it's like a boot camp.
Oh yeah.
And I think as nerve-wracking as that is, it served us. It only served us because we had 6 months of doing this. So I think that boot camp of the voice, of the intonation, of where my tongue places in order to say certain words and breath was invaluable. And we're deeply grateful to that department for that.
And lastly, for the both of you, playing in roles like Aaron, the Underground Railroad, and Brother, which dealt with like themes of identity and masculinity, and Kelvin and Cavalier Monster, Child Chicago 7, like how do you guys go about taking such iconic roles and traumatic roles?
That's really kind and thoughtful of you. And I think, I think the reason I do the work that I do and I choose to do is because honestly, it comes from a deep love of my loved ones and my community, and wanting to tell stories that connect with them and celebrate and champion their experience and explore their experience in all of its detail and nuance. So that is something that I will always do, have always done, and I feel privileged to be given the opportunities to do it.
Thank you so much, guys. This was amazing. Sorry, I have to wrap. I wish I could talk to you guys for an hour.
It's good. Bye.
Hi, ladies. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Good. I just want to say both of you were incredible, and you brought a lot of joy to such a very different take on this kind of, I guess, like themes. And Coretta and Betty are both very beautiful, strong, independent, and their own individual. How do you think they battled against societal norms and dealt with such like racist and sexist laws of the time?
Finding their pockets, right? Finding their moments. I think a lot of times that was even through their husbands, right? Is if Malcolm could see Betty, right, and see her fully as the woman that she was and found value in her, that gives her the courage to then sacrifice all that she has to sacrifice for him to continue to be the face of a movement that he was. And it's not easy. It can't possibly be. But they continued to find and have agency and fight for their voice and their space. Even to the point that after their husbands are taken from them, right, they are the ones that are solely responsible for continuing the legacies of these men. And that's only possible if these are women who know how to fight for agency and to make space for themselves in the face of societal challenges.
That was good.
I tend to.
Yeah, you do. You're smart and pretty. Oh, do you want me to answer this question as well?
Yes.
A lot of what she said, and I love that actually. I don't always think about that, but their husbands also empowered them, I think, to use their voices. I mean, especially because their husbands would listen to them.
Yeah.
They had husbands who did listen, who, would take, were accountable. These husbands were accountable to their wives. And so luckily enough, and I think enough, they trusted their wives because the advice they were giving was sound, and they understood and saw the results of what they were contributing to. I think it definitely was encouraging and would have given them more of a push to keep going. And like you said, all that they achieved even after their husbands were taken for them goes beyond the scope of just their husbands supporting them. They obviously had their own desires, had their own wants for the movement, for social justice and all that stuff. And so we see that these women were empowered and they chose to use their voice and kept going even after, their husbands were taken. They had their own desire to do great as well.
Yeah.
And Weruche, you have a degree in drama and sociology. How do you think this kind of helps you as an actress and taking on such like incredibly layered and important roles?
We love that question. Love that question.
So I really enjoyed sociology. I did a joint degree of drama and sociology. I didn't like drama so much because it was a bunch of old plays that I had to read. And art is it subjective? Subjective, yes. Everyone has their own interpretation. And so I felt it hard when I was being told that my interpretation of something was wrong. And so sociology for me was more enjoyable to understand the study of society and people. And I found that very interesting. And saying that now, it definitely does play a part in my understanding of all the characters that I take. And especially something like this, talking about social justice and, community at large, it definitely probably plays a part that I never even thought of. You just told me something about myself today. I would definitely say it played a part to satisfy a part of myself that's interested in the study of humans and society.
And Jayme, you were in The Woman King till the First Lady. Do you prefer taking on period pieces and like such important historical roles?
It would seem that way, wouldn't it?
I love it, like powerful.
I know, right? I find myself so blessed, honestly, and so privileged that in the beginning of my career to be able to do such, right? Because it's a wonderful opportunity. I pride myself in coming into this industry that I would tell the stories for my mother, for my sister, for my great-grandma, and for my niece, right? Like that's my audience. That's who I care, whose opinions really matter to me. And so I try to find roles and women through which I can do that. And it just so happens that in the beginning, it's a lot of these historical figures. It's a lot of these powerful women. But I think the thing that I've enjoyed with Dr. Betty Shabazz is we get to explore all the nuance behind the power, that she's not just relegated to this stoic individual, but that we get to see the frailties and the questions and the insecurities and the girlish moments in her. And all of that is as valuable as the quiet power that we know of her. And so I just find myself really fortunate to get to explore in that way with the roles I've been given.
And we get to see like Coretta's musical background and like how full of life Betty is. How is the character like you and how is the character different? And how is it kind of preparing, getting into like the fashion and the lingo?
But which part?
How was the character like you?
Okay.
How's the character like you and different? And what was it like getting into the character?
I mean, I really like Coretta. I think she's cute. You can tell by her fashion.
Yeah.
She, was a put together woman. Yes. She enjoyed the arts very much like myself. She had a lot to say. She didn't suffer fools. And I found a lot of relatability with that. And I was able to connect on that level. She's a woman of faith. So am I. That was a really strong thread between the both of us to give me some understanding about her and to just feel her out and show her in how I see her, my portrayal of her. Would I say there was much difference? I mean, the life she led was quite an interesting one. A lot of burdens, a lot of things going on. I think she was extremely strong, an extremely strong woman. And I'm just in awe of her. And yeah, I don't know how else to say that,
Yeah.
but you know, she lived her life, and I'm in awe of it. Yeah.
I For me, I found a lot similar with Dr. Shabazz, which was a treat, to a certain extent. Just as far as the need to be of use or to be of service. Like I understand that. I know what that means. I know what that looks like. And then as far as differences, you know, I'm of a different faith than her, right? So then what is that to have to present or in public, right? I can't necessarily there's a certain level of reservation as Dr. Betty Shabazz in the public eye, in the public view, especially when talking about crafting intimacy and chemistry with Aaron, right? They weren't allowed to have physical touch, right? And so when you're doing that whole courting process and everything is reserved for just the eyes, right? Things like that where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever just courted somebody with my eyes. I don't know. You know, and so having to really, that was its own thing and delve into that. So there were some differences, there were some similarities in that way. But the lingo, however, didn't feel too different.
No. I mean, apart from the accent,
right?
Yeah. But I watch so much American TV.
Yeah.
It just feels like this is natural right now. It's like my second, you know. But it was interesting to you know, to learn it, to hear the difference between it. And yeah, but you're right, the language, because you know, the language wasn't that wild.
No. I think there's a lot of that respectability,
eloquence,
that's still it lingers throughout generations, especially if you're around a lot of older Black men and women. It's still very much so there. You're still raised in it. And so it didn't feel too different in that way.
We've got well-spoken poems.
We do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was great. Congrats on the series.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, how are you? Hi, Gina. Hi, Reggie.
Hi, Nadya. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Really good, thanks.
I just want to say, I think the series does a phenomenal job of showing us their lives outside of the public eye. And it really makes you cry. It makes you laugh. It makes you smile. You see them dancing and like all these things you don't typically see with these stories. So how do you kind of go about telling like America's like really dark history and relevance even today, and what inspired this series and exploring real life events and taking creative freedom?
Well, you know, first of all, their humanity was essential to portray in this 8-hour film, and really want to credit, you know, my chief collaborator here, but as well, we brought in amazing showrunners and Raphael Jackson, Damian Macedon, an amazing writing staff. Had an amazing think tank where we had activists and scholars, you know, come together and just spend hours and hours talking about Martin, Malcolm, Coretta, and Betty. And, you know, just out of all of this, really put forth a narrative that just gave us the humanity of these 4 icons and allowed us to see them not just as icons, but as human beings.
And what was challenging about bringing the script to life and tackling such like traumatic historical moments? And what made you really want to be involved in this production?
It's interesting that NatGeo first came to us and asked if we wanted to do the 4th season of Genius about Dr. King. And while we thought that could be interesting, we did immediately say to ourselves and then to NatGeo, can't really have Dr. King without Malcolm X. They're both so integral, not only to the movement, but also to each other's rise. They fueled each other, they inspired each other, and they both had the same goal. They were just coming at it a little differently. And as their lives went on and closer to their deaths, they were more aligned than they were apart. So we really wanted to tell that story and change the narrative that you have to decide between one or the other. And again, through that think tank, we learned so much about them and their wives, and it really started to tell us how we wanted to tell the story and in what elements. But I think more than anything, that think tank, we all know about the big iconic historical moments. We wanted to know what was happening behind those moments. We wanted to know what was happening in their lives beyond being an icon. How are you as a father, as a husband, as a man, as a woman, struggling under such enormous pressure that so many of us can't even fathom? But we wanted to hopefully bring you into that, and as we've said, see their true humanity and their struggles and vulnerability, but also their fight and commitment.
And their joy, right? And their joy
and their love.
And love. And as challenging as that was, pertaining to your question, it was also the fun part of the narrative. It was just like, as an artist, to really hold the mirror up to each other, and then as in turn hold the mirror up to society today was a great task, but it was something that everybody dug in for, and really allowed us to elevate this series.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, I don't know, definitely sets it apart from a lot of the things that we've seen before, like you exploring their love lives, and like Martin actually has game. Like it was pretty fun to watch. So how do you think the series actually contributes to the larger conversation within the film industry, especially when it comes to themes of Black trauma and not exploiting it, and how the film industry can continue to like stem important conversations by showing us film like this and series like this?
I just think that this narrative is never intended to be a museum piece. It's never intended to feel like that was then, and therefore we can just kind of sit back and not feel it's relevant. It's so relevant and urgent, especially now. But we also love the fact that our actors are sort of young versions of Malcolm and Martin. Martin, 26 years old when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. Kelvin Harrison Jr. in his 20s playing Martin. Like, we love casting a younger Malcolm, a younger Martin, a younger Betty and Coretta, and just reminding the audience that they were young. They were young when they really committed to their lives to this movement, and that feels fresh and hopefully inspiring to young people today.
And how do you think the production is bringing something new to the story? What do you think the audience is going to be talking about, and what's going to surprise people watching this?
We hope we went into this thinking we knew a lot, and during that think tank, pretty blown away by the things we didn't know, the things that surprised us, and that got us excited because we knew then that we were going to bring to an audience and to the world aspects of their lives that people don't know and will be revelatory. So it's hard because we don't want to give them away here, because we want the audience to go on that journey and be surprised by every moment. I'll just touch on one thing which was such a surprise to me, and is not in anything I've ever learned, is that Malcolm X was at the March on Washington. That was a stunning revelation to us. And then obviously we explore why he was there and at what point he was, but things like that, which change the way we think about these iconic moments, that's just a big part of our narrative.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Congrats on the series. It's phenomenal, and I think a lot of people are going to be talking about it.
We appreciate that.
Thanks,
Thank
Nadya.
you.
Genius MLK stars Kelvin Harrison Jr. from the trial of the Chicago 7 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Pierre from the Underground Railroad as Malcolm X, Weruche Opia, I May Destroy You as Coretta Scott King, and Jayme Lawson, the Batman, as Betty Shabazz. The series also marks one of the last roles for Emmy-winning actor Ron Cephas-Jones from This Is Us. Genius MLK premieres February 1st on National Geographic and streams February 2nd on Disney Plus and Hulu. The pilot episode will simulcast on ABC February 1st. Be sure to check it out.